We start off with two developing stories tonight. First, the Max Green line at the Clackamas Town Center Transit Center is shut down after a shooting. TriMet sent out an alert about police activity nearby just before 8 tonight. Right now, the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office saying there are no reported injuries and there is no danger to the public. TriMet is setting up shuttle buses to serve the stations between the Gateway and Clackamas Town Center stations. The agency saying riders should expect delays. Also happening now, Forest Grove police are asking for help finding this man. Edward Bueno was last seen on David Hill Road near Thatcher Park in Forest Grove around 2 p.m. today. He's a white 70-year-old man with a medium build, gray facial hair and glasses. Police say he was last seen wearing a red shirt, tan pants, and carrying a gray jacket. He may also have a shuffling gait. Police say he may be trying to get to Gaston. If you've seen this man, call the number on your screen. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm John Adams. Oregon's primary election is less than 60 days away. And tonight we're hearing from two Republicans hoping to be the state's next governor. Jay Coulter sat down with both of them to talk about some of the issues the state is facing, from education to the bridge over I-5.
The cost to replace the I-5 bridge has more than doubled, now expected to cost nearly $15 billion. Two-time Republican candidate for governor and former Portland Trailblazer Chris Dudley says the bridge was a topic of discussion when he last ran in 2010.
We have to have leadership that says we've got to get this done, we've got to focus on it, we have to be realistic, and we have to have a plan to get it done. And it's a complete lack of leadership where literally, I was talking about this 16 years ago, that we needed to get on it and get it done. And here we are, and the cost has gone up by fivefold, and we're no further along.
Oregon State Senator Christine Drazen says the project has been bogged down by unnecessary additions. The current bridge plan includes a light rail extension, bike paths, and 3 new bridges to Hayden Island from the Oregon side.
We need a bridge that functions. We need a bridge that addresses capacity for the next 100 years. And we do not need all the bells and whistles and everything that they've attached to that bridge. They're trying to achieve too many competing objectives. We need to build a bridge.
Another issue we discussed, the $50 million budget deficit Portland Public Schools is facing. Just this past week, teachers approved a proposal to cut 3 school days, which Dudley says isn't fair to students.
Too often the kids are the victims of these budget impasses, and we have to focus on how are we better serving our kids? How are our kids getting the education that they deserve? Because right now we're failing our kids, and that's not acceptable.
Drazen says there needs to be a crackdown on absenteeism, especially as Oregon elementary students have some of the worst test scores in the country.
My legislation would restore a focus on reading in the 3rd grade. It would restore our graduation requirements, and it would allow teachers to be able to have some control in their classrooms again so that they can focus on learning.
That was Jay Coulter reporting. The Oregon primary election for governor is on May 19th. Traffic is flowing again along Southeast Powell Boulevard in East Portland after a deadly crash shut down the road for hours today. This is video captured shortly after the road reopened around 6:30. Portland police say the crash between a car and a motorcycle happened near Powell Park just after 2 p.m. The motorcyclist was rushed to the hospital where they later died. Powell was shut down between Southeast 26th and Southeast 29th for just over 4 hours. Well, time to talk weather. The first full day of spring brought lots of sunshine to the area with some really comfortable temperatures out there. Let's see how things are looking for tomorrow with the first look at your forecast with meteorologist Joe Ranieri. Joe, more blue skies ahead possibly for Sunday?
Yes, but it's going to be a very cold start. We're looking at temperatures in the low to mid 30s, and with those cold temperatures, we'll be looking at some areas of frost as well. A good portion of the west side of the state for your Sunday. Right now, though, we have clear skies, so this is going to kind of open the door for those temperatures to drop pretty quickly. Of course, without any cloud cover to kind of insulate us, that's why we're going to be seeing those temperatures dropping here over the next couple of hours. But again, a very nice start to the weekend. Bringing in the futurecast, there will be some clouds that develop early tomorrow morning, but by the afternoon, really up and down the I-5 corridor, we're looking at clear skies, even along the Oregon coast. you're looking at some pretty nice conditions along the beaches there. And then by the later part of the afternoon, we'll start to usher in some clouds, some kind of high clouds here and there. We stay dry all day tomorrow and all day Monday, and going into Tuesday, we'll start to see those showers move through. Most likely right around the time you start your morning commute, if you have a morning commute on Tuesday, because of course spring break for a lot of folks. But it will be wet and windy for both Tuesday and Wednesday. I'll talk more about that in just a few minutes.
All right, Joe, thanks so much. We'll see you soon. To the war in Iran now, and the new threat from President Trump. The president saying he will, quote, obliterate Iran's power plants if the country doesn't reopen the Strait of Hormuz in 48 hours. About 20% of the world's oil passes through the strait. Iranian attacks on ships in the area have stopped all shipping traffic in that area, sending oil prices soaring. Iranian strikes on key oil facilities across the Gulf mean even if the strait does reopen, it could take years before oil exports fully recover. Senate Republicans have blocked a bill that would have funded the Transportation Security Agency. Funding for the Department of Homeland Security ran out over a month ago as Democrats called for reforms to the country's immigration agencies. President Trump today warning he will send ICE agents to airports to handle screenings as early as Monday if Democrats do not fund DHS as a whole. Hundreds of agents have quit. Even more have called out as security wait times at the nation's largest airports ballooned ahead of the spring break travel rush. Republicans pointing the fingers at Democrats. Democrats saying agencies like ICE need to be reformed after immigration agents shot and killed 2 U.S. citizens.
For 35 days, they have blocked every effort to reopen the Department of Homeland Security.
Republicans still have not accepted that the American people want legislation, real legislation, to ensure the kind of brutality we saw in Minneapolis can't happen again.
PDX says it expects over 1 million travelers this spring break travel season. So if you're headed to the airport, PDX recommends arriving 2 hours early. Now to a list representing some of the thousands of grants cut by the Trump administration last year. A new federal lawsuit is revealing how the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, used AI to decide who lost funding. Evan Watson shows us how it went down and spoke with grant recipients who missed out.
At the University of Oregon, English professor Maddie Burkert specializes in theater history. She created the London Stage Database, uploading 52,000 nights of theater records from a 140-year period to a free online portal, a brilliant new resource for scholars, genealogists, historians, and data journalists. The National Endowment for the Humanities gave her a grant to expand it. Last spring, she lost that funding, based in part on a quick ChatGPT review.
And of course, I find it incredibly concerning because these were grants that were awarded incredibly competitively on the basis of extensive expert peer review.
The depositions of staffers who worked for Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, part of a federal lawsuit seeking to restore funding, reveal how DOGE cut more than 1,000 grants in a matter of days.
I think it was more important to reduce the federal deficit from $2 trillion to close to zero.
Did you reduce the federal deficit?
No, we didn't.
The workers asked ChatGPT if any existing grant projects related to diversity, equity, or inclusion. They didn't define DEI and asked for responses limited to 120 characters.
I actually asked Claude yesterday, the chatbot Claude, whether I could ask it to help me make some decisions about whether to terminate some federal grants. And the answer I got was, no, you really should not. That is not an appropriate use case for a large language model because of context and expertise and regulations.
DOGE ended up cutting roughly 97% of appropriated humanities grants, also targeting projects green-lighted during the Biden administration.
You'd say a ChatGPT review, a quick, massive purge of thousands of grants, that's not an effective way of cutting appropriate funds.
I do not believe so, no.
One DOGE staffer repeatedly struggled to define DEI in his deposition, referring to President Trump's executive order, which also didn't define DEI.
Do you have an understanding as you sit here today of what DEI means?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding of what it means?
Well, it is exactly what was written in the EO.
The High Desert Museum in Bend lost $750,000 in funding for 5 grants, including ones focused on the plateau's indigenous people and the changing climate's impact on the region.
We're not going to feel that right now. We're going to feel it a couple decades from now. What we lose are the stories of our humanity in that documentation, the nuance of what it means to be an Oregonian.
The University of Oregon provided bridge funding to help Burkert continue her research, and she reduced the scope of her project with the loss of that federal grant.
These grants far over-deliver in terms of the value that they offer to our shared public and civic life.
Evan Watson, KGW News.